Hello and welcome back to Clownfish TV. It is me, Geeky Sparkles, and it is just me for this video because Kneon is elsewhere. So we're going to talk about the big news, which is Netflix officially announces they're getting Warner Brothers. Okay. We did a video about this yesterday, actually. We hadn't had a chance to even put it up last night when this news broke. Because yesterday, there was a lot of stuff going on. Paramount sent a letter to Warner Brothers and wanted to go to their board about the fact that there was allegedly some underhanded shenanigans going on with Netflix. And then on top of that, Variety had a bunch of anonymous people, A-list Hollywood celebrities, sending letters to Congress trying to block this because they said it's going to cost a lot of jobs. And then after that, it got announced that Netflix says they're acquiring Warner Brothers. So a lot has changed, and this is our second video about this because it changed so quickly. It was a very fluid situation, and then it became a flood. So before we get into it any further, please like and subscribe. If you do, I'll give you a woohoo, and we're going to talk about it. So we're going to start with the big news, which is Netflix says they're getting Warner Brothers and the DC Universe for $82.7 billion. Okay, Hollywood's not thrilled about this because, as you know, Netflix isn't really one for theatrical releases, and they make their own stuff, and people are worried it's going to cause losses of many, many jobs in Hollywood. So here's an article from Comic Book News, comicbookmovie.com, I'm sorry. So they said it's official. Netflix has announced that it has entered into a definitive agreement with Warner Brothers Discovery to acquire Warner Brothers, including its film and television studios, HBO Max and HBO. The sale, which needs to pass through regulatory process, is valued at $82.7 billion. Equity value is $72 billion. In a press release, it said that the acquisition brings together two pioneering entertainment businesses combining Netflix innovation, global reach, and best-in-class streaming services with Warner Brothers' century-long legacy of world-class storytelling. It was funny because Kneon said, well, now Black State makes way more sense if Netflix is buying it. It also specifically highlights franchises like The Big Bang Theory, Sopranos, Game of Thrones, The Wizard of Oz, and the DC Universe, which will join Netflix's extensive portfolio. So there's going to be more IP in their portfolio so they can stream it. You can read the full press release here. Here we can go out to this full press release and see what it says. Here it is. Today, Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery have announced they've entered into a definitive agreement under which Netflix will acquire, we read that, they tried the money. The transaction is expected to close after the previously announced separation of Warner Brothers Discovery's global division network, Discovery Global, into a new publicly traded company, which is now expected to be completed in Q3 2026. So I have to wonder, because I believe that Paramount and them were trying to buy all of it. This deal just spins off, the stuff they want into the two companies, which I talked about before. And then they can sell it as a separate company, or, Zaslav and Co can just get to run that and go back to just being Discovery, because Discovery is the one who bought Warner Brothers. And then now they're selling it off again and a few years later, and going back to basically a division with Discovery Global in it. So it's the same thing as it was pretty much before you bought it and wasted a bunch of time and money. So now they can sell two companies, or he can keep the one he was in charge of before and go back to being in charge. This acquisition brings together two pioneering entertainment businesses, combining Netflix innovation. We read that already. And here's what Ted Sarandos said. Our mission as always has been to entertain the world by combining Warner Brothers' incredible library of shows and movies, from timeless classics like Casablanca and Citizen Kane to modern favorites like Harry Potter and Friends. With our culture-defying titles like Stranger Things, K-pop Demon Hunters, Squid Game, we'll be able to do it even better. Of course, we had K-pop Demon Hunters and Stranger Things, like we're going to have a short little run in the theater for a couple days, but none of this stuff really goes to theaters. Okay? Together, we can give audiences more of what they love and help and define the next century of storytelling. Blah, blah, blah. Here's a CEO of Netflix, Greg Peters. This acquisition will improve our offering and accelerate our business for decades to come. Warner Brothers has helped define the entertainment for more than a century and continues to do so with phenomenal creative executives. More basically just, a circle jerk here with this. And then we have Zaslav. Today's announcement combines two of the greatest storytelling companies in the world to bring even more people the entertainment they love to watch the most. For more than a century, Warner Brothers has thrilled audiences, captured the world's attention, and shaped the culture. By coming together with Netflix, we will ensure people everywhere will continue to enjoy the world's most resonant stories for generations to come. Yeah, that's the problem. Hollywood's scared to death because if it's going to Netflix, it could cost lots and lots of jobs. All right. Yeah, they're talking about their strengths and assets and more choice and greater value for consumers. By adding the deep film and TV libraries and HBO Max programming, Netflix members will have even more stuff to watch. Stronger entertainment industry. This acquisition will enhance Netflix's studio capabilities, allowing the company to significantly expand U.S. production capability and continue to grow investment in original content. Original content, not in new movies, not original content, which will create jobs and strengthen the entertainment industry. Okay, what is this about? This is likely about this letter, okay? Anonymous A-listers lobby Congress against Netflix Warner Brothers Discovery acquisition. It would hold a noose around the theatrical marketplace. So this article in Variety said a consortium of top industry players have sent an open letter of alarm to Congress, describing a potential economic and institutional meltdown in Hollywood if Netflix succeeds in its efforts to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. The letter was sent via email to Congress for both parties on Thursday from an anonymous collective only identifying themselves as concerned feature film producers. I mean, it would probably hold more weight if you put your names on it. Just saying. The group explained it was leaving the letter unsigned, not out of cowardice, but fear of retaliation, given Netflix's considerable power as a buyer and distributor. Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery declined to comment, but in the press release, they mentioned it about the entertainment industry. So, do they say what they said? The communication outlines 3 areas of concern. Netflix could stand to destroy the theatrical marketplace by escalating or eliminating the amount of time Warner Brothers films would play in theaters before hitting combined Netflix HBO Max streaming platform. I mean, my comment to that is you guys kind of did that already. I mean, you really did. This isn't new. I mean, Warner Brothers did the same thing by putting on HBO. Disney has done it for years. I would say Disney's box office failures can directly be attributed to their own insistence on putting it on streaming earlier because they wanted to build their streaming, which still, it's just, if it's profitable, it's not that much profit. It's barely profitable. And a lot of it seems to be ESPN. They said that they told Variety that Netflix's current proposal for Warner Brothers would have a theatrical window as thin as 2 weeks of exclusivity before moving to streaming. That sounds right, because Netflix doesn't seem to like to work with theaters. It's very rare for them to do it. K-pop Demon Hunters and now the end of Stranger Things were a little bit of an exception. Another insider familiar with the deal denied this, saying the periods would be longer. Rival bidders Comcast and Paramount both have robust theatrical distribution outlets. Paramount has specifically pledged to keep Warner Brothers operating as a standalone business that will make a minimum of 14 films per theater per year. They argued that Netflix would effectively hold a noose around the theatrical marketplace with what they assert would be enough market influence to reduce the footprint of theatrical movies and force down subsequent licensing fees paid in post-theatrical windows. So they're worried about licensing fees. It also references the many times Ted Sarandos and the CEO of Netflix, co-CEO, has extolled that Netflix business model has nothing to do with movie theaters. He said driving folks to theaters is just not our business. And to be fair, when you're reading their letter, it seems like that's what they're saying as well in their press release. They conclude by urging members of the House and Senate to speak out publicly against the acquisition and afford the potential deal the highest level of antitrust scrutiny. Okay, they said millions of jobs are probably up for possible removal or disappearance. So they're saying they're back to the press release. They're saying the opposite. They're like, oh, it's going to create jobs. They're saying it's more opportunities. So everything that this letter that was sent out said, they're basically quickly put this thing together to say no, that's not what's going on. By uniting Netflix's member experience and global reach with Warner Brothers' renowned franchises, the company will create greater value for talent, offering more opportunities to work with beloved IP, tell new stories, and connect with a wider audience than ever before. Connect with a wider audience through Netflix's streaming, not theaters. It's going to have more value for shareholders. By offering members a wider selection of quality series and films, Netflix expects to attract and retain more members, drive more engagement, and generate incremental revenue and operating income. The company also expects to realize at least $2 to $3 billion of cost savings per year. By the third year, it expects the transaction to be whatever earnings per 2 year, whatever. That's financial talk. But what's going on is they're using it to drive subscribers. That's what they're saying they're using it for. They're using it to, attract more subscribers. They're not saying they're using it to put movies in the theater. So yes, this does sound like the letter that the people sent to, the Congress and stuff is correct. Under the agreement, each Warner Brothers shareholder received $23.25 in cash and $4.50 in shares of Netflix common stock for each share of Warner Bros. Discovery common stock. This is like shareholder information. But basically, the deal is coming out to be quite a bit of money. $82.7 billion. Now, I mentioned earlier about Paramount, and they were complaining and sent a letter too. Now, that happened yesterday, and that's what we did our original video on that we don't have. And what happened there was Paramount sent a letter to Warner Brothers Discovery and said they wanted their shareholders and their board and stuff to know about it, that basically they alleged that there were some secret meetings going on in Germany or the EU somewhere, and that there was comments made that basically seemed to indicate that Netflix was kind of having a little edge and had a little side thing going on with them. They were kind of indicating that in the letter. I can find that letter. Hold on one second. It was on CNBC right here. If you go down here, they have the letter down here, and there are some accusations made. They said that Warner Brothers Discovery abandoned the semblance of reality of fair trade or fair transaction process, advocating its duties to stockholders, and embarked on a myopic process with a predetermined outcome that favors a single bidder. I mean, ultimately, somebody's going to win, That just is what it is. But apparently, the U.S. and foreign media have been saying that Netflix was going to win. And the truth of the situation is, when you're seeing it in the media that Netflix won, it does definitely sway, opinion both publicly and potentially for the people that would make the decision, or the shareholders that would be reading the news that don't really, have not the board, or not right there making decisions. So they said that this German newspaper, Handelsblatt, recently reported in a meeting, it took place in Brussels. The president of Warner Bros. Discovery's international business and direct report for Zaslav arrived with a 3-person team in the EU. Commissioner Vice President Henna Virkkunen, they discussed a potential merger prospects for Warner Bros. Discovery. In the conversation, the article reports that concerns were raised that the Ellison family's planned acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery could lead to excessive media concentration. Says Netflix, but Netflix, I would argue, has a lot of media concentration as well. I mean, any of these potential contenders, the only one that you probably could argue would be the one that wasn't a monopoly would have been Netflix, because they don't have a lot of theatrical. So if they were keeping the theatrical, they probably could successfully argue that they're trying to get into theatrical releases. The other companies already have studios with theatrical releases, and they may be able to argue that. But that's not what they're saying in their press release. It's basically if you read around it, they keep referring to it as content as if it was going to be on streaming. They aren't talking about theatrical releases, really. They're talking about, streaming content in their press release, which we'll go back to in a minute. But they said that that this was a kind of underhanded inside meetings and stuff was going on, and the German newspaper was there to cover it. The article quotes sources close to another person that was at the meeting, saying that the talks with the commission were important because both Warner and EU wanted to preserve media diversity. The implication of such a meeting, if it occurred, are clear and evince a tactic resistance to, if not actively sabotaging, the Paramount offer. So they sent a letter out saying that, they were doing secret underhanded meetings. It was kind of shit. It was undermining probably their offer and Comcast's offer. They, of course, only talk about their offer. And they sent a letter to the board and said that it was, looked bad. It looked like you guys were basically double dealing here. and stuff like that. So that was yesterday, and we were talking about that before all this other stuff broke out. So back to the press release. The transaction details and timing, we talked about that. This is just about basically the financials. But when you keep looking at it, okay, Netflix is going to conduct a conference call today at it was 8 a.m. to discuss the content as released. A link to the live webcast conference was available here. I didn't go to it because I wasn't available then. But yeah, so everyone's kind of like losing their shit. Hollywood's losing their shit. Paramount's losing their shit. Comcast isn't saying much of anything, probably because they're like, okay, whatever, moving on. Or they'll probably just go license DC or something from Netflix to use in their parks because Disney's, has the Marvel characters. And while they have Marvel characters in Florida, it's a matter of time till they don't have Marvel characters, even though the contract set up is such that they're supposed to keep them no matter what. It's Disney. They'll find a way to screw them out of that. So maybe they'll set up a deal to get DC characters or something. But it's going to get interesting because there is a lot of pushback to Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers. And that's something else that was mentioned by Paramount was they were offering an all-cash deal, and they wanted all of it. Where Netflix was, I don't believe it was all cash, but they only wanted part of it. But this way, Warner Brothers can sell two companies, like I said earlier, or they could keep it and Zaslav could run Discovery again like he used to. So I don't know what's going to happen because they said another publicly traded company that would be Discovery again. So it's a very interesting situation, and a lot happened in just a short amount of time because, like I said, we recorded the video last night, yesterday evening around 6 or so, or maybe a little later, somewhere in there, about the letter from Paramount, and then all this other stuff like the letter from the Hollywood A-listers, and then the Netflix was going to get it. All that stuff quickly happened after that letter was released from Paramount. So it's a crazy situation, but Netflix is probably going to get it because, like I said, they're going to try to argue Netflix is going to be detrimental. But how are they going to argue that Paramount already just bought Skydance? Now we need Warner Brothers too. I think you're going to have an uphill battle there, and Netflix could probably argue successfully that they don't have a theatrical release slate. Really, they've done a couple things, but this would give them a theatrical release that they don't have, that the other companies already do, and the other companies already have streaming services as well. They just aren't as big as Netflix. So I really don't think they're going to be able to do much to stop it. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on this, but if they're going to try to argue monopoly, I don't think that's going to work here. Disney got away with buying all the Fox assets. I really can't see how they can tell Netflix they can't buy Warner Brothers. So we'll see what happens. But there it is. There's a lot of information in like 20 minutes, and I talk really fast, and I'm very sorry for that. But I get excited, and I try to slow down. Like right now, I'm trying to slow down very much, but I normally just speak very quickly. So please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.